As the pandemic receded, the business models of India's edtech startups have started to unravel. With schools reopening across the country, demand for online tuition has dwindled, affecting the revenue of edtech companies in recent months. The pandemic helped this sector as much of the country's $180 billion education sector went online. Companies rode a boom in the online education industry over the last 2 years as they bet big on the pandemic related phenomena. Indian edtech startups raised $4.7 billion in 2021, up from $2.2 billion in 2020. This made the edtech space the third most funded Indian startup category, only behind e-commerce at $10.7 billion and fintech at $8 billion. But they are now laying off hundreds of employees amid a funding crunch and higher customer acquisition costs post-pandemic. While faltering investor sentiment and slowing funding rounds have affected startups in general, edtech companies are among the worst hit. So far this year, 9,000 employees have been laid off by 18 Indian startups, according to Inc.42's Indian Startup Layoff Tracker. Of these, 3,000 belong to 7 edtech companies, including Unacademy, Vedantu, and White Hat Junior, a subsidiary of Byju's. Just last week, non-academic upskilling startup FrontRow, which offers courses taught by celebrities, laid off 30% of its workforce, amounting to 145 staff. A couple of them, Lido Learning and Uday, have shut down altogether. Soumya Yadav, co-founder and CEO of 2.5-year-old Uday, said the startup shut down because business was not growing after the pandemic and not because of funding crunch. She said that as children went back to schools, the company faced roadblocks in growing the original model of online live learning. All-time high customer acquisition costs, low retention rates after the pandemic, and screen fatigue contributed to the shutdown. Unacademy co-founder Gaurav Munjal recently told employees to focus on profitability at all costs. The company's new goal is to reach profitability and generate free cash flow, he said.
What happened was that there was a endless supply of cheap free money. Now a lot of it got channeled into these edtechs with the premise and the assumption that online delivery will remain the mainstay. None of these edtechs cracked the unit economics. All of them were earning 100 rupees and spending 500 rupees to earn that 100. Now, as that money is beginning to get dry, for some of the smaller ones, it's going to disappear overnight. For the larger ones, it's going to come at an extremely high cost. Option left them is try to become profitable overnight, which is not going to happen. Now, in an organization where people don't understand what profitability means, it's like changing the DNA and bone marrow of that organization. See, in the VC community, changes colors the fastest. Till yesterday, hyper growth was their mantra. Now their growth is generating free cash. Any business will take 4 to 8 quarters to move from a hyper growth trajectory to a profitable cash flow positive trajectory. Say schools were sooner or later going to reopen. Kids go to school partially for learning, partially for friendship, partially for bonding, and a lot of learning happens in that environment. Online education doesn't deliver even 1% of that.
By 2030, India's education market is projected to increase to $313 billion. The market size today of the edtech industry is about $2 billion. The opportunity is vast given India has the largest population in the world in the age bracket of 5 to 24 years, with 580 million people. India has over 250 million school-going students, more than any other country. The companies are embracing the hybrid model and innovating to scale up their offline presence because the market is still big. Byju's last year acquired 32-year-old Akash Educational Services in a $1 billion deal, marking its foray into the offline education market with 200 plus centers. It is investing over $200 million to open 500 brick and mortar tuition centers in the next 12 to 18 months on top of the existing 80. Unacademy last month announced its foray into offline learning with its upcoming Unacademy centers for competitive examinations. The first such center will be operational this month in the coaching hub of Kota, followed by Jaipur, Bengaluru, Chandigarh, Ahmedabad, Patna, Pune and Delhi. Vedantu is also reportedly exploring hybrid options. Ankur Pava, EY's India e-commerce and consumer internet leader, said most edtech players are working towards an omni-channel approach to improve learning outcomes and experience, create more stickiness and reduce the cost of customer acquisitions.
You went through a cycle of hyper growth sooner or later, investors will start demanding that pound of flesh. I, sitting on the other side of the table, felt bad when companies doing 50 lakhs of revenues could raise 500 crores as capital. And I said, I, as a company doing 250 crores of revenue, when I go out in the market to raise 100 crores, there are 200 questions asked to me. But raising $50 million was like walking to a pawn shop and buying a pan. They had a honeymoon for 24 months, or these cycles come every 5-7 years. 2 out of 50 survive and the others don't. There are certain skill sets which you can learn online. You can't replace a school with an online. See, even in supplemental education, in the test prep industry, we used to have 20% online delivery and 80% offline delivery pre-COVID. In COVID, that went to 100% online. Now, as centers reopen, the needle will not go back to either 80-20 or stay at 20-80. We expect that 60-65% delivery will go back to offline environment. There will be certain segments which will remain online, but that too also for a certain age group. You can't test an 80-year-old or a 10-year-old in an online environment. Companies which are sustainable, revenue generating, cash generating business models, whether it is offline, whether it is online, or a hybrid model, will survive and sustain. Now, what is that mix? And let the market decide for itself, let the customers decide.
So it is clear that big edtech firms with deep pockets are funding their hybrid move to stay in business. Some of them had made the right moves even before the pandemic started ebbing. Like other sectors where competition is stiff, the future belongs to those who can innovate while focusing on sustainability.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.
यार
मत पूछ यार, फिर से स्टॉक्स में फंस गया।
तो स्टॉक्स के साथ बॉन्ड्स, इंश्योरेंस, गोल्ड में बैलेंस कर।
इसमें बहुत तामझाम है।
तुझे 5 पैसा नहीं पता?
अब तो सबको पता है। 5 पैसा है ऑल इन वन अकाउंट। डाउनलोड 5 पैसा नाउ।
अब तो सबको पता है। Investing made easy and rewarding with 5 Paisa. Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.